Okay, hi guys. I'm Coffee Pink, aka Sierra, and this is Alden. And we're back for a new little series where I get to ask him some questions about how he feels about certain things of my practice and paths and beliefs and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to start with, how do you feel about your girlfriend being a witch?
That's a very fun thing.
It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, I mean, I like the fact that you're showing me everything and stuff that I never really knew about. I mean,
So new experiences.
yeah, I grew up around a bunch of Christian stuff and all that, and people saying a whole bunch of crap about witches and all this and bad things and all that.
Like what?
Well, evil stuff, Halloween stuff, and all that other stuff too. But then there were other people saying all sorts of cool stuff like satanic and all that.
Yeah, just so you know, witchcraft is not necessarily satanic, and it has no religion.
Exactly. But the thing about it is,
it can be incorporated into religion, but it's not religion.
I'm happy because from you, I'm actually pretty much learning the truth of it. Behind everything and all that, behind what everybody says, is the real truth. From the witch's mouth.
For those who don't know, Satan is not technically in the pantheon. I mean, religion, witchcraft. Let me start over. Witchcraft in and of itself is not a religion. It is a practice. It is a set of skills that you can use in your regular daily life, and it is applicable usually to spiritual things or spells, the usual. Things such as tarot readings, palm readings, all that kind of stuff. It can be incorporated into it, and it's a very general term of just practice of a certain skill set. Okay, it's like any other skill set. You can learn it, you can grow with your experience. You always start out as a beginner, and then you grow with experience and become more experienced over time, but you never stop learning, just like any other skill. The closest thing I can compare it to is and for those of you who know that I do art, it's kind of like art. You get better with it over time. You gain more experience over time, so you develop your skills and obviously get better and more skills over time because you are learning. You are constantly learning your skill set. It's no different than any other trade. It's basically kind of like that, is the simplest way I can explain it.
I honestly feel like I also remember people saying, "Oh, you're not this, you're not that, you don't do this, you don't do that." It's not about that either, from what I understand.
It's not about doing it or don't doing it, because it's also
doing it your own way, right?
It's doing it your own way, and there's so much diversity in witchcraft because depending on your personal path, that it can vary, just no different. The closest thing I can compare it to is Christianity, how there's so many diverse different types of Christianity. There are just as many diverse types of witchcraft. One example is Wicca, which is a religion that incorporates some witchcraft into it, and it is a fairly young religion, started in the 1950s by Gerald Gardner. It's not an old religion. It's based on older religions, but it incorporates a lot of older things.
So you can't put witchcraft in a category. You can only put it in a category if you have.
It's kind of like an umbrella term because it incorporates so many diverse things.
Like everything can be witchcraft, sort of things like that.
Not necessarily everything can be witchcraft, just everything that incorporates witchcraft as a whole can be under the umbrella term. Sort of like how paganism represents all the different varieties of pagan beliefs.
I understand. It sounds like I understand it, but to me and stuff, it reminds me of like
it's sort of like how Christianity incorporates Catholicism. Paganism would be a term that is an umbrella term that incorporates all the different paths, kind of like how all the different religious paths. Okay, Christianity is a religious path. Okay, fair enough. And then when you get into the different types, it's kind of like that in that there's Catholicism, Lutheran, there's non-denominational, there's Methodist, I already said Catholic, Let's see, Jehovah's Witness. There's different varieties of it. For, say, witchcraft, there's there's like a Dianic witchcraft, like a Dianic Wicca. Wicca would be another umbrella term for Wiccans. Wicca is the actual religion itself. Wiccan, it would be the practitioner. To give an example of that, there's Dianic witchcraft, there's the Gerald Gardner witchcraft, which is the traditional one in the U.S., because that was formed in the 1950s here. Not here, but like found in the 1950s in general. He's the one who started the Wiccan movement. And also Doreen Valiente, and she should be mentioned because she's part of that. But that's a whole other story. But in paganism, there's like Norse pagans, there's let me think of some other examples. There's Celtic polytheism, there's Luciferian, which incorporates Satanic beliefs into witchcraft, and incorporates witchcraft into the Satanism beliefs. But that's a whole other thing. It's just saying there's so much diversity that it just is hard to incorporate everything into it. Witchcraft is like a skill set. The closest thing I can compare it to is like science, math. There's all the different career paths in it.
In terms of video games, I can compare it to a video game. Like, you know how you have this one path where you can be a lancer, or you could be a swordsman, or you could be a witchcraft, or something like that.
Or you could be a mage.
Yeah, something like that. And it's part of the little skill set.
It's basically like your class. Your class would be what the path you're on is in witchcraft, but that's a good way to put it. The path that you're on in witchcraft is what you make your practice out of, what your core beliefs are, what you decide to incorporate into your path. Path is what we call our witchcraft practice. We call it the craft, usually, for short. We incorporate it into our craft. Me, personally, I am of the Asatru community, and that's my religious path. But my witchcraft practice is separate from that, in that while I do practice Norse polytheism, I personally incorporate general witchcraft into it, such as things like tea leaf readings, candle magic, incense burning as offerings for my spirit companions, candle magic as in burning of candles as offerings, and making of my own candles, what I used to do in the past. I also incorporate wands that I use in spells and other items. But for me, visualization is so much more important because you visualize your intent and then you release that energy.
One last thing in that part, though.
Yes.
You can't really, you have to understand all that and stuff in order to truly understand it, maybe, right? Understand that witchcraft is just not what a whole bunch of people would say. Now, people who don't know anything, or like Christian people who just say or see it as like, oh, witchcraft, it's just one thing and stuff and all that.
It's not.
They don't understand it, so you can listen to them. Everybody has a right to listen to it, but that's not the truth. The fact is, witchcraft is different. The whole thing about it is different. Like, think of this. People can say, oh, well, there's a witch around and all that and stuff, and they'll go all into bonfires, bull crazy crap and stuff and all that. But that doesn't mean stuff that's the truth of it, because, like, they could be a witch, and they could also be something else at the same time, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can still be an everyday person. Like, there are still witches who are dentists. There are witches who are doctors. There are witches who are nurses. There's shopkeepers. There's cashiers at your local grocery store. There's all kinds of different people that incorporate witchcraft into their daily lives. They just might not make it openly as I do.
I think the point I'm trying to say is just don't believe the hype. All you gotta know is
don't buy into the hysteria that goes into it, because there's so many things that you can have that you just don't understand until you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah. The one thing I'm saying is just don't believe the hype, because remember, Christianity tends to pull things from several other different things too. And they've done the same thing in terms of witchcraft and witches. They pulled all separate different little things and stuff. Like, sure, there could be one thing about this part of the witch that's true, but then there's another part of that path that is also true. But they'll pull it all into one, and they'll merge it all into one to make it seem like decidedly evil or something like
And
that.
bear in mind that historically, from what I understand, at least from a historical standpoint, the King James Bible is what first started incorporating, the King James Version of the Bible is what first started incorporating witches into the text, and is also made specifically for King James in England because at the time they were trying to give him a target. Okay? If you want to look it up, feel free. You can feel free to Google it and find out your own research, do your own research. I encourage you to research more about anything before you decide to come to a conclusion of what you hear. Because there are so many different diversities of it that what is individual to the person might be important to that person, and you gotta need to respect that regardless whether you're Christianity or a witch or anything else. You have to respect other people's religions because it's just common courtesy, and it's also they have a right to believe what they believe in. They want to believe that witches are evil. I'm all for that. But that's not necessarily the case because there are extremists no matter what religion or path you're on, no matter if you're religious or non-religious, whether you're atheist or whatever you happen to be. There are extremists in every path of life, no matter what type of life you have. Just remember that extremists are a part of that, but they are very much the minority of those communities. Most people are not going to go out and make sacrifices, all the stereotypical things that people associate with it. Most of the time, sacrificial is something as simple as cutting a lock of hair and then offering it by burning it or something like that. And it's your hair, not someone else's, and it's a devotional thing. But I'll get more into that another time. Okay? It's not necessarily an evil thing. There are people who take it way too far and make it so exaggerated, and then those, unfortunately, are the people that represent us in the news. But to round it all back to normal, another thing I wanted to know is how do you feel about witchcraft when I practice it in the house?
At first, I was a little skeptical, scared, but that's only because when you got on the topic of spirits, I really didn't understand. But after you explained to me and stuff exactly how much that really means and stuff in terms of spirit and all of that stuff, like basically, I was more okay with it.
You're more accepting of it.
Yeah,
A little bit.
because it seemed to click to me, because I understand stuff in terms of that. I mean, I may not be like a witch or all that stuff, but
Yeah.
I tend to click to things real easily and stuff. And besides, I've always felt like I was pushed into some religions and all that. So whenever I had another open door to me, and I've always looked for several open doors and seen if things were right or wrong, and I've learned that a lot of religions and stuff always make you take their path. But with this one, you can choose whatever path you want and whatever way you want to go. And you don't have to go back and say, you've got to pray to this person or pray to thousands of gods and all that. You can do things on your own terms. I love that about this.
And bear in mind, you can incorporate deities if you want to, just as a side note. Yes, you can. If you do have a religion already, yes, you can incorporate witchcraft into it because it's a skill. It's not something that is religion specific. If your religion is completely against witchcraft, you might have a little harder time incorporating it. But if you do some research, you might be surprised of how accepting most religions actually are of it in history. And I'll let you finish.
All I was going to say is, I'm accepting it. Honestly, I feel like it doesn't do any harm to me because you would never do any harm or anything that would be harmful. And if there was such thing as that, I mean, you gotta really truly believe in it sometimes for it to hurt you. That's what I say.
That's what you say.
Yeah, but that's me. I can be that way. That's the kind of guy I am.
And no, I don't actually try to go harm people. I usually try to help them.
It's kind of like the same thing. I mean, I'm not gonna ever say nothing about this, but it's kind of like I have to see it to believe it sometimes. So that's the way I am.
You're very stubborn.
I'm stubborn like that, though.
He has to experience it for himself to be able to believe things.
Exactly. And there's a lot of things and stuff in every single religion that I have not experienced. But even in this one and stuff, if there is things that I have experienced, it's not about experiencing them. It's more like fun, just showing, like, like
A passion for it.
A passion or something. Yeah, like you want to keep your mind open. You want to keep your mind open. That's why we're all on this world. So, I mean, to try new things, to explore new things, and all that. That's
And
how
just explore life in general.
Exactly.
And explore yourselves while exploring life.
If you want to be straightforward and go one straight path, that's you. But there's a lot of people out there that want to see everything they can do and want to know everything about things.
Exactly.
That's how I am.
There's some people who want to question and want to seek out things that they haven't experienced in everyday life. And this is just one way to do that.
You can believe the other people and what they're saying about, but it's completely different. Like, say, if you had a drink and stuff you've never tasted before, and then the other person said, oh, it's terrible. Would you take that drink? You probably wouldn't. But at the same time, you'd be curious about what it tastes like, so you'd probably go back and taste it.
Okay, one more question. Well, two more, actually. Another question I had for you was, does it ever bother you about the incense smoke or anything else that I use in my practice?
I have a sensitive nose, but other than that,
like most the smoke of incense?
Well, most of the time it smells a lot better than whatever other people are smoking. But at any rate, what I mean is, it's actually very peaceful to me. Whenever it smells like that, like the candles and the incense, it's very peaceful. Like, I love the smell of the dragon scent.
The dragon's blood.
It's really strong at first, but then
you just
it's more comfortable. It feels like you can put that on there and then you can draw something or make something. It just feels like all sorts of things in your head start to flow too.
It just clears the air and clears the energy, which is the whole point of why I do it.
Exactly. I mean, if you got the tension in the air all the time and stuff from a job or bills and all that, you can put one of those little things
on.
And
just to share, one way that I clear the energies is to burn a little candle that makes you feel good and just has a good scent, or even a clear white candle. Just put your intent into it that you want some good energy to put out into the world and allow the candle to burn and then just let it happen.
I think it's more like the feeling and stuff you get from doing it. The feeling that you get around it.
The more you practice, the stronger your energies are and the more you can do with them. And the more you'll learn how to use them in your skill set as well.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
Does it bother you about the spirit companions and how do you feel about them?
Like I said, at first I was wary about it because I pretty much let my crappy other mind say, oh, well, spirits don't remind me of like inviting evil things and all that stuff. But then after a while I understood stuff. It's more like, I'm a little wary at times about all the stuff. They have names, they have descriptions and all that.
Yes, they do.
But I tend to be like, well, as long as it doesn't bother me, then I'm fine. And I admit that seems a little bit like
you're wary.
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't really do any harm to us. If anything, I think those little spirits be like, holy crap, you're living here, or holy crap, you don't have any money. Let me change that. They'd probably be fighting alongside with us. That's just the thought I was thinking. Nobody would want to make harm on you. The spirit wouldn't just come to bring malice and destruction or all that stuff.
Let me put it this way. I know when I'm feeling sad, I always feel this sense of like little warmth around my feet. And I know that it's my spirit of Jesse because he always used to rub around my ankles when I was feeling depressed. And whenever I feel like a warmth anywhere and like he used to lay all over me, lay in my hair, I usually feel a warmth around my neck or shoulders and stuff like that. And it's just funny because every time I go about crying or something, I always feel his energy with me, and it just is comforting to have that familiar energy. And that's my experience with that one. But I have a really, really, really strong bond with that cat. So it's a little different than, say, something that you don't have an existing bond with, such as the dragons that I mentioned for Elon, I have to get to know them, as well as other spirit companions that I've had over the years. I've had to get to know them over time. That's true when you get any new companion. You have to be very careful with the spirit that you have. You have to have a trusted source that you use to get them. That's why I recommend Creepy Hollows and Magical Menagerie, because they're shops that are very well trusted within the metaphysical community, and they are well known for actually having what they promise to give you. And I think I'll end it there for today. That's all for now, and thanks for listening.